Hello everybody, hope you're doing marvelously well. We're back with another frequently asked questions, which I believe is called FAQ Friday. FAQ. I don't want to get us banned for saying a word that we didn't say. Anyway, as ever, please subscribe if you haven't already. You can go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list and get a whole bunch of free goodies, which include drum samples and sessions and all kinds of fun stuff. So let's get stuck in. Our first question is this. Can you let me know what small console you use to record drums through? That's a great question. It is a Cadac console. It came from Pi Studios. It was built in, I believe, 1971. And we had it completely rebuilt a few years ago. Actually, quite a few years ago. I spent a lot of money having it rebuilt. Beautiful sounding console. Michael Stucker rebuilt it as well. Actually, I had two people rebuild it. The first person who rebuilt it, it didn't work. Didn't work at all. So Michael Stucker, who's at Indiana University, who's the guy that we designed the UK Sound 1173 with, rebuilt it again from scratch and did an incredible job. So thank you, Michael. That's what it is. It's a great sounding console, and it's what I use to not only record drums, but also some mixes through quite often. It has an incredible sound. What is your all-time favorite drum mic? I mean, it's going to be as obvious as this, an SM57. I mean, we proved that with doing the Van Halen recreation, that an SM57 can be used on anywhere. Toms, snare top, snare bottom. You can use it on a hi-hat. I frequently do. You can put it anywhere. An SM57, a good quality dynamic microphone, can be used for almost anything. And I would lie to say that it's anything else. Look, of course, 3 U67s, 3 47s, you know, in a Glyn Johns technique. That's amazing. That could be an all-time favorite drum mic, but an SM57 is a phenomenal dynamic microphone. There are other cheaper and different versions as well, but ultimately the 57 is one mic that I cannot escape from. It gets used on drums everywhere. It gets used on guitars. It gets used, you name it. It's an incredibly versatile, affordable microphone. And as Eddie Kramer told us, the predecessor to that was used everywhere at Woodstock, and it was the only mic they used to record with. Modern music is also heavily reliant on click track and would rob some of the vibe and feel that the old 60s and 70s music had. What are your thoughts on that? Well, I think that some kinds of modern music. The reality is we live in this incredible world now where there's so many wonderful genres, from extremes like EDM, programmed music, hip hop. Pure pop music definitely revolves around heavily gridded, heavily tuned, heavily timed music. Then there's full-blown, organic, acoustic guitar, vocal, one microphone. Those are the two kind of opposites. And then everything in between. There's some heavy rock. That super metal stuff is like super gridded, super like played and performed. And then all in between. There is no one style. There's many, many heavy rock bands that don't play with clicks and don't use samples and don't get tuned. So there is no real answer to that question for me, because I feel like it's sort of assuming that there's either only purely gridded music and then everything that isn't. I feel like we live in a world now, and you can see this from the live video we did yesterday on Thursday. Check it out. That is not gridded. There's not a single grid. I actually created a tempo map from the drummer. And then if I had to edit, I edited to his kick and snare quickly by having a tempo map that was created from it. So there is no right or wrong way of doing things. There's so many different ways of doing things. For me, I feel like I have to know all of those things. So sometimes it needs to be, or feels like it should be, like super, super tight. Other times it feels like you should be tracking with no click. So my feeling is learn all of the different techniques and then apply the right technique to the song. Whatever feels right for the song is what should win. Question about drum panning. Do you like players' perspective or audiences? I like audiences. This is such a simple answer because I'm not primarily a drummer. I do play drums, but I grew up as a guitar player who learned to play drums. So I always think about it from listening to a band, going to the show, all of that stuff. And most of the records I listened to as a kid were usually, not always, but usually from audience perspective, based on a live show. Now, as music has got more modern and more produced, I've noticed obviously there's a lot of great drummers now that are also producers, and mixers, the drummers I work with are producers and mixers, always make their records from the drummer's perspective. So it's a tough one. Piano playing is usually done from piano player's perspective. Mixing is usually done from a live perspective, but there's no rules. I think both is okay. It is okay. Plus, you could be doing it with a left-handed drummer. So there's no real answer. You know, drummers play left-handed, then you could be doing audience perspective from a left-handed drummer's perspective. There's no right or wrong answer with that. Whatever you want to do, whatever feels good for you, whatever makes the song great. Nobody is going to listen to a song and go, oh, the hi-hat's on the wrong side. It's just not going to happen. It's just going to be, does it sound really good? That's all that matters. Is it a bad idea to add plugins to your master fader? No, it's not a bad idea. Just don't load so many things on your master fader. You know, like compression, EQ, limiting, compression, EQ, limiting, compression, blah, 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 multiband compression, dynamic compression. You put all of that on, you are defeating the purpose of mixing. When you turn something up, it just gets squashed back down. You bring up some high mids, the multiband compressor controls it. All of this makes mixes dull and flat and unexciting. As we've been doing in the live streams recently, and so please check them out, we've been moving away from that top-down kind of approach. I know it's very popular to talk about on YouTube because it's like an easy solution, but it's not how great mixers mix. Great mixers mix by creating great vocal sound, great drum sounds, great piano sounds, great keyboard sounds, great string sounds, and bringing them together. And then when there's a low-mid build-up, they find where that build-up is. They don't just reduce the low-mid on the master bus. That is mastering. That's a last-ditcher thing. We just did a drum mix yesterday in the live stream, and I've summed everything together, and it had too many low mids. So then, on my drums, and then I brought down the low mids, and it sounded good sometimes, but generically, it didn't make the drums sound good. So I went back to the drums and individually removed low mid on individual elements in the overheads, in the room mics, in the kick drum. When I started pulling that out, I then bust it back together and I listened to it and went, wow, this sounds so much better than just generically doing it on just the bus. Same problem. Don't do it just on your master fader. That is what you do as a last resort. You should be looking for the low mid issues and other issues on individual elements before they get to your master bus. So yes, I do use EQ and compression on my master bus, but I use gentle amount of compression, a gentle amount of EQ, and maybe some limiting to get level at the very end. But I'm very conscious of how I'm hitting that. Shouldn't be solving my problems. That should just be complementing. I might do a little extra 60 on the mix just to bring up the kick, a little 10 or 12K just to add some brightness, but I'm not sitting there doing tons and tons of stuff on the master bus unless I've got major problems. And if I've got major problems, I should be solving them in my mix before I get to the master bus. What are your thoughts on vinyl emulation? I don't really have any major thoughts on that. I haven't really tried that. I remember there was that vinyl plugin of old that added and all that stuff. That was kind of fun. I think every mastering engineer that masters to vinyl, all of the big ones like Pete Lyman and Adam Ayen, anybody that's doing stuff for vinyl always says that vinyl, you know, Howie Weinberg was explaining this when I was talking to him. Mastering for vinyl was always compromising the mixes they were getting. They would have to shave off the low end because it couldn't be reproduced. The stylus would jump out of the groove. You know, they were always compromising the master tapes that were being heard in the studio. Quite often, I've spoken to guys like Shelley and Jack and all these guys in the 70s. They'd put on an album and they'd be disappointed because the mix would have some of the high highs they had put on there removed, have some of the low lows. And even with the RIAA curve, it wasn't quite what they experienced in the studio. So we love vinyl. All of us love vinyl. There's something romantic about it. There's something wonderful about having a 12-inch gatefold sleeve and seeing photos and credits and lyrics. I love it all. However, vinyl emulation is an interesting perspective. People can fight about this all they like down below. Personally, I want my mix to have all of the broad, 20 to 20K, 20 hertz to 20K. I want it all in there. I don't want to restrict it. That's just me. But I think that that's a better way. Even the mastering engineers I know that master for vinyl would agree with that and often say it. But there's something about vinyl which has got a different experience. We love it because of the experience of bringing out that 12-inch, putting it on, putting the stylus on, sitting back with your gatefold sleeve, reading all the credits, listening to music, looking at the huge photos of the band, all of that stuff we love. And that is more important to me than having an emulation. Personally speaking, not that I wouldn't try a plugin like that, I just haven't felt like I wanted to yet. Maybe I will. All right, thanks ever so much, everybody. I really appreciate it. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Please leave a whole bunch of comments and questions below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and have a marvelous time. Just have a marvelous time. Goodbye.